Okay, Nedra, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast. Exactly. I'm absolutely honored to have you as a guest today. Before I get into asking you all of the questions I have about boundaries, people pleasing, and probably some questions that I'm figuring stuff to do with myself out as well, I would love to ask you my quick fire questions. If you could just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, so question number 1, what's one thing that sets your soul on fire?
A good night's rest. It makes me feel amazing the next day. Like, I feel like I pop out of bed. I have childlike energy at least for 1 hour. I feel so good. So it sets me on fire when I get like the most impeccable night of sleep.
Okay, on to the next question. What is the last photo you took on your phone?
Last photo I took of my phone is something of my kids. They are constantly taking my phone, making me take selfies, making me take pictures of random things. So my phone sometimes does not belong to me. So I'm sure it's something kid related.
Okay, that's adorable. Okay, on to the next question. What's something that people frequently misunderstand or get wrong about you?
People believe that I'm super serious. So when they hear me talk or they see me in person, sometimes they're often shocked that I'm full of personality. I have a sense of humor. They're like, oh my gosh, I thought you were so serious. I'm like, yeah, I don't know you. Like, you're literally reading my words online. I'm not writing jokes. I'm writing very serious content, and I don't know how to make childhood trauma funny. So it's going to sound serious and direct, but in real life, I have a very colorful sense of humor.
I found that also being someone who puts my work out online and stuff, it's that people think I always want to talk about also the very serious things that I talk about online. And that just doesn't translate in my inner circle. And I feel like the closer I am to someone and the more that I trust them, the more they get to see the other sides of floss. Okay, finish this sentence. This is the last one.
Okay.
I'm still a work in progress when it comes to...
I'm still a work in progress when it comes to staying focused on my goals and not allowing other people to misdirect my path. Because of the space I'm in, lots of people have ideas about what I should do next. So they aren't even my ideas. It's just like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? You should do this. Have you thought about this? Ooh, here's a good book idea. I'm like, I am not a suggestion box. I am a human in the grocery store.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you thought about, I'm like, I'm not trying to, do all the things. I have a lot of books on this shelf for a reason. I want to be able to read them. I want to be able to watch a ton of TV and, spend time with my family. So I can't do all of the ideas. So I think sometimes things are wonderful for other people. Things are wonderful ideas to do, but it's just not a good fit for me.
I feel very aligned with you that this entire episode and that it was coming today feels very aligned for me right now. And everything that you're saying about feeling misdirected or feeling misaligned, when there are a lot of voices, and like you said, when your work is so public, a lot of people have suggestions and ideas about what would be good for you. And it's actually it's such a relief to hear you say those things about the kind of life that you want for yourself, because there's almost this pressure, isn't there, when you do put work out there and you have this platform or these ideas that you need to do all of the things for it to feel worthwhile or to feel like you've accomplished something. But the goalposts just keep on moving, and then you don't get to enjoy the things you want to do, like read books and watch a lot of TV.
Yeah, I think we could get so busy working that we don't live. The living is really the inspiration for everything else. It's not the work.
So I followed you on social media for probably a few years now. Your checklists always remind me when my boundaries are off skew. Probably even the introduction of the concept of boundaries was through your work. And something that I love is that you've always stayed so consistent, even with your little yellow color scheme. It's so recognizable on the bottom of all of your infographics. I feel like it's been there for years. is. And I feel like you have such a unique voice in everything that you talk about on social media. And I would love to ask you about your latest book, Drama Free. I would love to hear you talk about it. I love the title. It's amazing.
Yeah. So Drama Free is a book about helping us to manage our relationships with unhealthy family members or just unhealthy relationships within the family. So often there is this push to cut it off. But as we know, because there is this energetic tie to our parents, this energetic tie to our siblings, it can be hard to just walk away. And there are things that we can do to stay in those relationships and not necessarily cut them off. So the book talks about cutting them off and being okay with that, or learning how to manage those relationships. There's not a lot of information about how do we stay in bad relationships. And what I found with my clients is most of them do not leave unhealthy relationships. The therapy is really about giving them strategies of how to stay, how to survive the next family gathering, how to advocate for themselves with the parent, how to be themselves, how to talk about their relationships with their partners, with their parents. It's about how to be in an adult relationship with a parent who was emotionally abusive. It's not always about, just leave your parent. They were terrible. Just stop talking to your sibling. Sometimes people don't. And they still need tools to be able to be in those relationships because everybody doesn't want to leave. There are many of us who want to stay and figure out a way to work it out.
You said there that there aren't that many resources for this kind of particular issue when it comes to boundaries and relationships. And I couldn't agree more. Every single time I do a Q&A section for my podcast at the end, or when I do my Q&As, when I'm communicating with my audience, people always ask me, how do I handle living in a household with people? Because I can do it with my friends. I can change the amount of time I spend with them. But when it comes to family, either you live with them if you're under 18 or you're over 18 and you're still living with your parents, whatever it is, even having to go to visit parents, it can cause this tightness in your chest at even the idea of having to see them that's just unmanageable, and also brings out such an old version of yourself when you go to visit them, which can feel like all the work you've done on boundaries has just gone out the window. Do you ever experience that with your clients as well?
Absolutely. There's something about us that happens when we're in the presence of our families where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do what my parents say, or if they really knew, who I was, they wouldn't like me. Like all of those things still come up, and we're constantly trying to figure out, okay, how do I let them know that maybe I don't want to get married? How do I let them know that I don't want to have kids? How do I let them know that, what they did when I was, a kid it wasn't okay? And how to either recover those relationships or release them. The biggest thing that I think people will learn is the recovery part is really about you. It's not about your parent changing, your sibling changing. It is you doing the work to say, this person will be who they are, right? Like if your parent has an addiction, this parent will be this. So knowing that, how do I want to engage with them? Because I can't stop them from doing what they want to do or what they choose to do. How do I engage with this person? How do I engage with my mother-in-law who gossips about me? Perhaps I can stop sharing certain things with my mother-in-law.
Yeah. You've said before that boundaries are nothing to do with the other person. It's everything to do with you, because you can't control other people. You can only control how you engage with them and set consequences for their behavior. We can hope that people would stop the harmful behavior, but you can't rely on that, because then that steps into controlling. So I feel like that's a perfect example there of what you're saying about the gossiping. You can't stop your mother-in-law, your auntie, whoever, gossiping about you. So what you can do is you set a boundary with yourself not to share with this person. think probably the hardest thing, and the thing for me anyway that's been riddled with most guilt, is outgrowing someone and outgrowing a person, and the boundaries that have to change with that. When do you know that something is a nonverbal boundary? So you're just outgrowing someone and times are changing and you've drifted apart, versus when you've maybe unfairly ghosted someone. Does there need to be some kind of announcement or something that you have changed and that this needs to change? Or does it always need to be that direct when you've outgrown someone?
It does need to be direct, but not in the sense of I've changed and you need to change with me, but in the sense of I don't want to go to clubs anymore. I don't want to talk about other people during our conversations with each other. Let's focus the conversation on what we're doing, what we have going on. That's how I want to be in conversation with you. It doesn't need to be, I've evolved. I've changed. I've shifted away from gossiping. It's like that could be a bit off-putting, but there are many ways to say that and to let people know where we are. I used to have a friend who I did not use Facebook. Well, I used Facebook for 1 year, from 2009 to 2010. And then I did not use Facebook until I started using it professionally about 4 years ago. I would have a friend who would like screenshot stuff from Facebook, and she would, gossip about people like, oh my gosh, look at this person. And I would clearly say to her like, hey, I don't need to know what's going on with this person. That's why I'm not on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like I literally don't want to know. Like I'm doing everything in my power to not know about these people that I knew 15 years ago.
Yes.
So she would send it, and then she would get upset because I wouldn't respond to it. And she would be like, oh, because you don't like the gossip. Exactly. There's so many other things we can talk about. I certainly don't want to talk about this person from like elementary school who, is doing it. I wish them well. I don't even know what's going on with them. We really don't have a relationship. I'm not trying to foster this level of energy. So it really is on us to say, I have changed. Like, and I don't even know if that was a significant change as much as I'm just not interested in the same thing as you.
Yes.
I'm not interested in this level of behavior. And that's not to say that I never gossip about stuff, but I didn't want to do that. That just didn't feel good to me, to look at people's lives and make those judgments about it. So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. And then in that situation, it requires an assertiveness and boundary setting to even be able to stop doing that, because otherwise you could slip into the people-pleasing part of you that continues to allow it to happen without saying anything because you want to run away from the conflict. So what tips would you have for those situations where you can feel you're a bit out of your integrity, you're going back into an old version of yourself because you don't want to have to say this thing to this person, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to go to the club, I can't be around alcohol, whatever it is that you want to say to a person. What tips do you have for people in that moment when they need to assert a boundary and hold it as well?
I think that's a perfect moment. I'm closing my eyes now as we're talking, but I think that is a perfect moment to close your eyes and really speak to yourself and say, if I don't create this boundary, I can't create my life. Like you can't live your life on your own terms if you're adhering to everything that someone else wants you to do. To do things that are misaligned, it just feels, I don't know about you, but I feel terrible inside. I started with, oh, I love to feel rested. There's nothing that makes me tired and drained more than doing something I don't want to do.
Yes.
That is like, I am instantly tired at the thought of it. So for me, I have found that I work best when I am able to be in line with my integrity. I can manage life better when I am able to say, these are the things I will do, and these are the things that I will not do. And there's this thing that happens in the world where we feel validated when people are living like us.
Mm.
So in that situation I described earlier, my behavior, my friend probably thought my behavior is okay because she's in it with me. And I'm like, no, I'm not in it with you. I'm not there. It's just, so it's like, wait, are you trying to say something wrong with me? No, I didn't say anything. I'm just saying I'm not doing it.
That's the thing I've struggled with, is not making people feel bad about their choices when I stand with 2 feet firmly in mine. So I've been on nights out before where I don't do drugs, and I've said no to drugs. And then the friend who overheard me decline them was like, she literally said, I don't like that. And I was like, why? And she was like, I don't like that. I feel disgusting now about myself. And I was like, I didn't say anything. I just don't want to do drugs. It was someone I half knew. And that was interesting to me, because normally that's something that's so internal, but she actually said it out loud. And I felt like it was the perfect story for me to see how it's happened so many other times. And I think that's often the fear for me anyway, is that when I set a boundary, I make people around me feel uncomfortable because I'm not signing the social contract that this is what we do, or this is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a part of the boundary setting, not being able to please everybody with your boundaries. And that is, the drinking and drug examples, nobody really talks about adult peer pressure. There's a lot of focus on teens are peer pressure. I'm like, adults are peer pressure. Those teenagers who used to peer pressure people, they're now grown and they're still peer pressuring people. One more, have a shot. You don't want to do drugs. I mean, it's like, let people live in their lane. Sometimes there are some choices that maybe even dietary that you can make that I can't make. There are some social choices that you can manage that I can't manage. Doesn't mean that any of those choices are bad necessarily. It's just that we're different. So I don't even see that as, oh my gosh, you're a terrible person. It's like, no, I'm making the choice in this moment to decline this thing, or to say that I don't feel comfortable with this situation. You can go ahead and do it. I'm not stopping you, because guess what? Free will. You can do whatever you want to do. And then I'll be over here doing my thing.
You said at the beginning that most of your clients, you came to realize, don't leave relationships that they are unhappy in until much later. When do people typically leave relationships? At what point?
With parents, I'm going to give it a high percentage of never. I would say 85% never. There's just this continuous talking about the problem with the parent, the problem with the parent, the problem with the parent. With parents, there is this deep level of connection that we have. So unless there is something as egregious as sexual abuse, I would say sexual abuse, because even physical abuse, we could chop that up to childhood. I'm an adult now, right? So they can't hit me anymore, that type of thing. Emotional abuse, we kind of tolerate it because, unfortunately, emotional abuse seems like the lesser of all the abuses. However, it is one of the most impactful. So I think with parents, it's pretty challenging. You see people leaving more relationships with extended family. That's the most, right? Extended family, they're out of there. Aunts and uncles, cousins, not so much, grandparents, but parents, I would say, are the hardest to leave, and then siblings. There is something about the teaching of, that's your brother, that's your sister, you're your brother's keeper. You have to watch, when there are sibling relationships, that are far worse than any friendship that we can experience. It's like a Cain and Abel story in some of these families. It's like, but that's your sister. It's like, oh my gosh, that's your brother. You should always help him. And it's like, yeah, since you were, small children, you all didn't get along. You didn't have anything in common. This person was your bully. This person was your, there are a lot of things in those dynamics that are long suffering that we continue to tolerate. But it's hard to recover the damage of abuse in a family, right? Especially many people don't have parents who acknowledge it.
Yes.
There is this, I think it's one thing if you have a parent who says, oh my gosh, when you were younger, I was on drugs. When you were younger, I was so caught up in my story, I couldn't pay you any attention. Most people don't have that. Most people have parents who are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your life wasn't that bad. What are you complaining about? I did everything I could for you. No one's perfect. I mean, just all of these things that are like, oh, wow, this person has no accountability. And because they don't have the accountability, they're continuing to operate even in the adult relationship with the expectation that you get over it and move on. And they are able to be this non-accountable parent in your adult life.
There's so much guilt tied to even bringing something up in adult life about your childhood, isn't there? Because it's almost like you already have the words in your head about what you're going to be met with if you do bring this up. Again, like I was doing my best. This never happened to you. This was completely fine. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons, and I'm sure you know this, like why people never bring it up or minimize it to cope with it, right? Minimize what happened so that they don't have to think about it anymore, because the idea of bringing it up, it's almost like you're just kind of ready to be shut down with that kind of stuff.
People will fight it. I've heard people very clearly describe abusive situations, and I'll say, do you think there's anything there? Like, do you have any feelings about what happened? And they will normalize it. But we get so used to surviving, just getting through it, that even in adulthood, there is this, I just need to survive this relationship with my parent. And really that deep connection comes in when we can be honest with each other, when a parent can say to a child, I didn't have the tools.
I think when it comes to parents, there's always going to be, I mean, as you said, it's like, and you made up the statistic, but like 85% of people roughly probably wouldn't leave their parents. And I can just see how that's so true, because like you said, that's your sister, that's your brother, that's your mother. We're encouraged to kind of, for some reason, with family, take it all on. And I think that what you're saying is it's not radical in the sense that it's too much or it's over the top. I think it's just what people need to hear. But because the cultural script has been for so long, that's your mother, that's your sister, how dare you? I imagine you do face quite a lot of people who just completely disagree with your approach. And I think it's amazing that you talk about this stuff, because I can't imagine the amount of abuse that people still tolerate from their families just because of this cultural script. And I think it's incredible that you break it.
Yeah, I think we like to talk about childhood trauma, and we don't talk enough about adulthood trauma. There's trauma still happening in relationships with family, because when the people haven't changed, they haven't changed. So they were the same in 1993 as they will be in 2023. And so when you're in those sort of systems of certain things, you're just constantly in this phase of re-experiencing. That Monday after Thanksgiving, my phone is ringing off the hook for new clients at my practice. the Monday, at the top of the year, the first 3 months of the year, after we've had that saturated family time, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to go to therapy. I cannot believe I just sat through another year of dysfunction.
Wow. And so would you say, again, there's so many reasons that would even happen. I assume one of them would be the slipping into an old self. Again, like you said, the being frightened of a parent, or even just going into an old character or old mode of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about people pleasing and where it comes from, what it looks like, and how I love that you describe it. It's not kind, and it can almost sometimes be worn as this like badge of honor. I'm a people pleaser. I just this is what I do. It almost has this like sense of martyrdom to it, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. It's in all of us. Many of us are raised in families and school systems and society to some extent that drills us down to be people pleasers. To the extent that manifests, it varies, right? There are some of us who can tolerate, hey, this is a situation where I need to, maybe step back and let this happen. And then there are others where they're always stepping back. So there is this scale, so to speak, of, are you always doing it, or are you doing it sometimes? I think for those of us who are always in the spirit of making everyone else happy over ourselves, or giving of ourselves in ways that make us suffer, that is when it's problematic. There has to be some level of, this is not a time to give. I have nothing left to give. I recently read this children's book called The Giving Tree. Mm-hmm. Have you ever read this book?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's so good. Okay. So basically, the book is about this tree, and this little boy goes to visit the tree, and the tree feels so bad for him. He just gives away everything. You need a limb, here's a limb. You need this, here's that. You can sit here. You can, all of this stuff. So he eventually gives him his whole self away. He's down to a stump. And there's nothing left to give. That's what happens with so many of us. We give away so much that we have nothing left to give. We give away the branch. We give away the fruit. We give away the leaf. We cut ourselves. Then next thing you know, we got to cut ourselves all the way down. And that's not even enough for people. We have to be able to say, you can pick an apple off my tree, but you cannot have all the apples. You can take a leaf, but do not take them all, because there are times where we have to recognize that we need to be able to replenish. We need to be able to restore. One of the things that I really value is the waking up refreshed, right? Because if I can't take care of myself first, I can't create content. I can't write a book. I can't even complete a sentence if I am not gathered in my spirit before I start to pour into other people. So how do we, pour into ourselves and pour into other people? It's not, hey, don't do anything for other people ever. But how can I be there for you and be here for myself?
Okay, Nedra, thank you so much. We're now going to go into the listener questions. These are some, my audience had so many that they wanted to ask you.
Okay.
I'm just going to go through some of these, if you could help me answering them. Do you have any tips for confronting flatmates without causing a fight when they've crossed a boundary?
When we are having difficult conversations, it's really important not to beat around the bush, to give people a lot of fluff up front, or to tell them how they might feel about what you need to say. So my tips would be direct, but don't try to protect their feelings or tell them how to feel. Some examples of that would be, I have something really tough to say. I need to talk to you later about something major. Like these sort of things we tell people. Let's assume that they won't be offended. We don't know. How can I have the conversation with you about doing your share of the cleaning or paying your rent on time, and it not be an argument? That is possible. It could be as simple as saying, hey, rent is due on this day. Can you please, pay it by this date? Did you want to watch Seinfeld later? It doesn't have to be, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. This is going to be so hard for you to hear. You're going to be upset. We do not know that. We often assume that, and we go into it with that energy, which sometimes causes disputes because we are energetically ready for a fight. And it doesn't have to be a fight. It just needs to be a conversation about whatever is happening in the house.
Yes, I've definitely been set up for things before with people that say, hey, I really need to talk to you about this thing later. Can we set aside some time? And it was the smallest, tiniest thing. But because they were so afraid of my imagined reaction to this, I was like, oh, that's not an issue. Done, sorted. And I was like, was that it? And they're like, yeah, that was it. Okay, on to the next question. How to differentiate between when I'm people-pleasing or when I'm being my kind and generous, authentic self?
I think people-pleasing probably shows up in the stuff that is not value aligned. It's not something that you want to do. You don't see any value in doing it. You're doing it for the other person. Kindness is genuine. It doesn't feel heavy. It feels very light, and it feels freeing to do it. It doesn't feel like an obligation to do it. We don't have to step outside of ourselves all the time to help people, especially when there's going to be multiple opportunities to be of service. Operate within your skill set, within your gift set. Sometimes we are giving of ourselves in some ways that's really a stretch for us, and it's unhealthy to do that. So it can be really helpful to think about, am I doing this because they asked, or am I doing this because I want to help them?
Okay, wonderful answer. Another question here is, what foundations make a healthy relationship?
There cannot be a healthy relationship without trust. And when we trust people, we're able to be vulnerable with them. We're able to be carefree. We're able to have hope for the relationship, to plan with them, and to be our authentic selves. When there is a lack of trust, you cannot be authentic with a person because you are on guard.
So trust makes a healthy relationship. And would you say that at the start of a relationship as well is probably the best time? I think you've made a reel about this where you said that that's where we should be looking for those kind of character traits in a person before we get emotionally attached to them.
Yes. The beginning of dating is the best time to weed through the people you want to be with. And sometimes because people like us, we'll like them back and we get attached right away. Just, oh my gosh, they like me. And it's like, someone else will like you too. Like, keep going if this isn't the right fit. You don't have to force the shoe to fit if this is not it. And that is okay. Sometimes we do like people and it's just not a good option for us. People can be really kind and generous and funny and not be for us. So thinking about, if trust is important to me, I'm moving in this new situation, looking for indicators that this person can be trusted. When I see that they can't be trusted, is it something that I need to discuss with them and maybe get more information? Or is this an opportunity for me to be in a relationship with someone that I can trust? Not just in dating, with friends, with coworkers. Those are also opportunities to look at relationships and make sure that you are in a relationship with a trustworthy person. Because if that foundation is not set in the beginning, there will be problems throughout the relationship because there are trust issues.
My script for today's episode is just covered in blue biro notes. I've written so many, some of them that I can't even make sense of them. Some things about discernment, some things about trust, some things about how people-pleasing feels heavy, it feels like a burden, and how giving from an authentic place feels genuine and light. I can't wait to journal on what Nedra's told me today, particularly with the place that I'm in at the moment where I'm just leaking energy out everywhere and not really giving a lot for myself. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. You can follow Nedra on Instagram at Nedra Tawwab. That's NEDRA TAWWAB.